Welcome back to the Mission Offroad podcast. In this episode, we're diving into 9 products often associated with overlanding. With over 40 years of combined experience in 4x4s, off-roading, and overland adventures, we'll tackle the big question: are these products justified or overrated? Stick around and join the conversation. Next on Mission Offroad. For the first item, let's bring up 12-volt fridges. 12-volt fridges are refrigerators that overlanders keep in their vehicle for food when they go out in the wild. Chris, let's start with you.
Okay, so, just to start off, just to give you just a brief intro. When I go out on the trail, I'm more of I'm off-roader first, then an overlander, if that makes any sense. So, when I go out, it's more for day trips, maybe, max 2 nights out. But I think I want to bring the perspective, for people who just want to maybe camp, casual on the weekends, so on and so forth. So regarding the first item, the 12-volt fridge, I think between having it justified or overrated, I think it would be overrated. That's just for me, because when I go out, my setup is more like I bring 2 Pelican coolers, one for my personal cooler where I'll keep my snacks, my drinks, to keep me hydrated and nourished, while I'm driving and stuff. And then I'll have a separate Pelican one, which is a little bit bigger. I'll store some food, some quick foods I could heat up and stuff that I use in tandem with my jet oil or even more drinks and stuff. So for me, I think it's overrated.
All right. So Sang, thoughts?
So, and as you know, all 3 of us are pretty OG in the off-roading scene. I mean, we've been doing it for decades, multiple decades and even before all this tech was even around. I mean, when I first started, LED bars was the first thing that came out, and everybody was freaking out about that. So when I first saw a fridge being used, it's pretty awesome. I think it's definitely useful because, and not to mention, if the old school way is even the coolers tech has gone up, but the older coolers, they only hold ice for a day or 2. And then if you're out there for a week or something, then, you have to bring multiple bags of ice or figure something else out. So it's nice to be able to have a fridge that's dedicated and, plugged in, and you can rely on it. And sometimes people use them even in their house. So I would say that's justified in the price for sure. And you can carry ice cream with you. So
ice cream.
12-volt fridges for me, I consider it justified. I thought it was a major game changer. I just love the fact I no longer have food swimming in melted ice water. So that's a major game changer for me.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
Yeah, but I understand where you're coming from. I mean, when people buy 12-volt fridges, now they have to buy a power pack and possibly solar panels, because when the car is off, you need a way to keep that fridge going. And the next purchase you end up getting is probably a battery pack. So the expense just multiplies. But yeah, so that's good. Our next item are rock lights. Bang, thoughts on rock lights?
Rock lights or something neat. Well, it's kind of been around, and people were doing it with little original halogens and whatever light you can throw under there. And now we have these little fancy LED magnetic lights. But I feel a lot of it's for show. A lot of the import scene turn overland, and then they like their shiny underglows. So I don't see them really being used for night off-roading, which is what it's really for, like tire placement and stuff like that. But I don't see it being used. I think it's overrated.
Chris?
Well, okay. Well, full disclosure, I have rock lights on my vehicle. So I think the majority of the population does overlanding. Notice how I said overlanding, not rock crawling.
There's a difference.
Do not need it. It's certainly it certainly helps out because, when it becomes dark and you're going to start doing operations on a trail at night, I mean, the more lumens, the better, but it's not necessary. And, for an overlander, by the time it's night, chances are they have already wanted to settle down and they're not moving their vehicle. They're camped out somewhere because it's, as you guys may know, it's pretty hard to find a campsite that you'd be happy with at night. So I don't think it's necessary. I think it's overrated for overland use.
That's a good clarification.
Point. Yeah.
I actually bought a set and never installed it. I'll get around to it someday. But I also feel it's overrated. But for the sake of conversation, I'm going to just reiterate some of the things you all mentioned, that for rock crawlers, people can spot you at night if you do have lights underneath your vehicle. The problem is some people are not positioning the lights in a manner that it shines the ground, but they're using it to light up their suspension or their wheels. So it's mostly for show. But at the same time, they're inexpensive. It's a fun DIY project. But yeah, I agree, for overlanding, it's probably not necessary. It's probably overrated. So next on our list are ditch lights. Sang.
So, like Chris said, the more lumens, the better, because I'm blind as a bat at night. So whatever I can see. And the thing I found out with ditch lights is, yes, a lot of people put ditch lights on and that's all they have. But if you have, something at the fog light level, something at bumper level, and then your roof lights, if you actually adjust those beams, there's a slot that's kind of empty right where your windshield is. And I've pointed my ditch lights to cover that field. I know a lot of people do it to the sides, and you can do that too, but I feel like it's the more light, the better, to be honest. So justified.
Sang says justified. Chris?
I think it's justified. I think overlanders, like what Sang was saying, the more lumens, the better, especially in situations. You can benefit from ditch lights with, you're going to be on a tricky trail. You're already dealing with uneven, off-camber obstacles, and now you have to deal with the switchback. So having the beam pattern in that area where you're going to be headed to, it really helps out. And, you could have so many lights pointed forward, but we need that angle. And also helps out with, picking the area where you're going to park your vehicle at a campsite. So I'm all for it. I had, when I was a noob to off-roading in general, I was in Uray, and we were on Engineer Pass. We were doing a night run.
Wow.
And and it was raining as well. Yeah. So we hit the spot where it was all rocks. So it became slick rocks and it became switchbacks. So that is forever embedded in my head. Get better lighting, because I couldn't see anything. So I'm all for ditch lights, safety first, and then all the benefits right behind it.
That's good to know. Those are good stories to hear. Personally, I have not installed ditch lights. I think they're overrated only because some people, when they install them, they're pointing straight. So they're not really covering the perspective that you both have mentioned. And I also read a lot of stories about them getting stolen because they're just like out in the open, ready for the taking. So, I mean, when people put up like $500 ditch lights, they're just asking for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are good examples of how ditch lights would be used.
Yeah.
Next on the list, we have recovery boards, aka Max Tracks. Chris, thoughts?
This is a tough one because I think with the overlanding setups, whether it be a Forerunner or an Outback and stuff, it's evolved over the years where it's, I hate to say it, it's not as like in terms of hardcore off-road parts that are incorporated. It's more for like convenience items like roof racks, stuff like that. So initially, a lot of people were running perhaps winches and, certain recovery products. I think now these days, a set of Max Tracks is ideal. So I would say it's justified because a lot of these vehicles, they may not have the proper recovery tools. And on top of that, as an overlander, it does benefit when you want to level out your vehicle if you're going to do some in-car camping or like for rooftop tents where, when uneven ground could definitely ruin a night, when you're trying to sleep well or do whatever. So I'm all for it.
Interesting. Sang.
Now, I know that comes with some kind of off-road heritage, right? Because like the old, Dakar teams would have those metal
sand rails on
their trucks. And Max Trucks comes out with a good product and it definitely comes in handy when you really need it, but it's only good for like a couple uses because if you're really hard on those nubs, they'll just melt. And I've experienced that multiple times. A lot of these people just mount them to their roof racks and then they get sun weathered, brittle. And the first time they use them, they're probably going to crack. I think they're overrated. Maybe if there was some like more durable metal ones or something that can be used more often, but maybe those will get too hot on the roof. I don't know. But yeah, from my personal opinion, Max Tracks, yes, it will get you out in a situation you really need it. Like if it's the do or die and that's the only thing you have and you're in sand or something like that, it'll help a lot. It'll destroy that board in one use.
Yeah. I just think people just need to know what they're getting themselves into. It's not like a guaranteed get out of jail card for it. They need to understand the nature of these products.
I think we've found ourselves in a gray area with the recovery boards, and I see where you're all both coming from. Again, my comment earlier when I say some of these items are ornamental on these rigs, and when people keep their Max Tracks or recovery boards on their vehicle 24/7, they will get weathered and damaged. And I can't say they're overrated because I benefited from a recovery. I was a little too excited. We foolishly went to Oceano Dunes at night and I got stuck, and someone's recovery boards did help me out. And I felt bad because at the time they were very expensive. There's no other brand selling them. And I did melt a few of on those boards. Yeah. So, and our good friend Dewey, he also went out doing photography in Oceano Dunes by himself, but he got stuck, but he had 4 recovery boards for each one for each tire, and he self-recovered. So I can't say anything bad about it.
Good job, Dewey.
Yeah, good job, Dewey. All right, cool.
Oceano Dunes will humble you if you are not
definitely
prepared.
Yeah.
It's a fun time.
Next on our list are, I can't say canvas trash bags. They're not always made of canvas, but the trash bags that are hanging out external to the vehicle. Thoughts, Sang?
So, it's always important to carry your trash out, and having that trash in your truck is not great. Having it on the roof rack, it can spill, break the bag. So I think it's a great product. It's definitely useful, and I think it's definitely justified because it's very important to always carry your trash back out regardless. So it gives it a place there to be.
Yes. Chris?
I agree with it as well. I think it's justified. Not only you could use it for trash, you could use it for bulky items such as firewood.
Firewood.
I can't talk to the firewood. So I use it for firewood when I'm getting to the site and stuff. But pro tip, if you're going to be driving high speed in the desert, make sure you secure the bag down, because if you have a little bit of slop inside the bag, it'll create some momentum. I believe you guys saw at the time when I flung my trash bag, my fancy $300 canvas trash bag on the
tactical enough to be whoop rated. Okay,
it was very tactical. I think it's 500 D Cordura, some fancy stuff. But yeah, I think a canvas trash bag or trasharoo, whatever you want to call it, is very beneficial. You could just throw in trash can liner, plastic bag in there, and then when you're all done with, at the end of the weekend, just pull it right out. And make sure you leave the place cleaner than when you saw it. It's pretty bad these days with people being sloppy and disrespectful for the lands. If you are ever bored, download the app, Sons of Smoky. Shows all the areas where there's opportunities to do trash pickups, so on and so forth.
Oh, cool.
So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've owned a trasharoo for several years. I also believe they're very important when it comes to overlanding. It's important to pack it in, pack it out, and I would prefer to keep all my trash outside of the vehicle than inside. Yeah. And I also have brought in firewood using my trasharoo. And some of these products are very creative. There's a lot of pockets. I put tools all around my trasharoo. And yeah, some of the critics that want to judge overlanders, and again, that they're ornamental accessories. Some people keep their trasharoos on 24/7.
Yeah, which you should.
Yeah, they get all weathered out and they look awful over time. But anyway, so our next product are Hitch spare tire carriers, like the ones from Rigid. What's the other brand? Rigid.
The one
Dirtcom.
I had
And
the
then-
original one, the one I told your cousin. Was it?
My nephew.
Or nephew?
Yeah, what the heck is that name?
This is the original one.
The OG one. We're
Yeah,
getting old.
no. Wilco.
Anyway,
Wilco.
Wilco.
There you go,
Yeah,
Wilco.
Yeah.
I'm sure all
Okay.
these new Rigid ones are way better. I mean, I could start,
Sangfats.
but anyway, so I owned a Wilco for a long time because for the GX470 there is no option. I mean, I came from FJ Cruisers, which had the built-in spare tire carrier, and I always think it was very important to have a matching spare for that GX before the door mount came on from JW. We had a hitch mounted carrier. While it is a good option to have because it gives you that option to have a spare tire for not much money, I guess, or intrusive to the truck, like the JW where you have to drill the door. But the only thing is when you have a 33 or 35 or 37 inch tire on there, it makes it really difficult to open sometimes. And if you're off-roading and you're on like an incline or something, like it's difficult to even get the door open sometimes and get that pin out. So I felt that was kind of inconvenient. And because it's all point loaded on the hitch, I could kind of say it's justified, but at the same time, it's a pain in the ass. And I almost avoided opening the rear door and went around to go to the back seats to get something just because it was such a pain in the butt. I'm sure the new rigid ones are way nicer. I haven't personally used one of those, but I don't know. I'm half and half on it.
Chris?
Okay, so like for me personally, I think it's overrated. But it's certainly, I think it's an item that's under certain condition. It's conditional based on the situation we're going to be doing. So if you're going to a destination where you may not have been before, or you have, what do you call it? You know, you just have limited experience with, I would say it is justified. But if you're comfortable with plugging a tire, I would say you could get away with it, especially just on like maybe weekend trips and stuff like that. There's even patches that repair your sidewall, which is pretty bad. I forgot the name of it. It's called like tire glue or something like that. It's pretty wicked. Just crazy technology where you're literally putting a Band-Aid on the sidewall. So, you know, given if you don't have a catastrophic blowout, you could probably get away with the solid patch kit, and if you're confident on patching a tire, because I understand not everyone's comfortable patching a tire, and don't forget your air too to air up the tire after it's to get it going. So I would say it's situational. I think it's overrated, but it certainly has its benefits in certain situations.
Yeah, interesting perspectives. Since you're both saying it's slightly overrated and saying you're torn between it, I'm gonna throw out some reasons they're justified, because as soon as someone upgrades their tires, and which is almost a natural progression for anyone building their 4x4, once they hit 35s, most vehicles cannot store those in their stock location. So you would have to get one. Although these things used to be fairly reasonably priced, and there are more products out there in the market, they've become really expensive, but they are still cheaper than replacing your rear bumper with a steel bumper and buying swing out arms. So although they've become costly, they're still cheaper than a full steel bumper replacement with swing outs. So I think if you have upgraded your wheels and tires and you no longer could put them in underneath your vehicle, then go ahead and do that. Some people put their spare tires in the vehicle, but that'll take up storage space. And some people try to put it on the top of the vehicle, which will lead to your car being top heavy. So yeah. So I think they're justified. I made one myself, actually. It was fun while it lasted, but we'll save that for another story.
Sounds like a spicy story.
Yeah. Well, yeah, DIYs aren't always good, but we'll save it for another video.
Okay.
So next up are steel bumpers, front and rear. You guys can decide what you want to talk. Chris?
Oh yeah, From overlanding's perspective, overrated.
Or in general?
In general, for off-roading, yes. But for the theme of this show, from an overlander's point of view, I don't think you need it. I would say 70 to 80% of the trails of the overlanding spots are accessible in a way in which you don't have to traverse any terrain where it requires for steel bumpers. I think for the majority of the population, but personally, I think more steel the better. But based on just general overlanding, you'll be fine without them.
I see. I get it. Sang?
From first-person experience, my first GX, we took it to Sedona, and it was supposed to be a nice, easy trail. And we did Broken Arrow and didn't warn me. So I dragged my front bumper on everything over there because I was still out height with tires. So yeah, that I totally destroyed this front bumper after I had the truck for like 3 weeks or so. That definitely led me to a fast track to get a bumper made or get a steel bumper. I feel like the front breakover clearance is helpful, and most of the time, you're right. In overlanding, most of the time you know where you're going, but sometimes there's that time where there's a shortcut or like you're on some trail offshoot that you don't know, and it turns out to be something very steep, and you have a hard time turning around, and you just have to go through it sometimes. I feel like that investment is a good investment just to get you the clearance. And if you need a winch, then you put a winch in there. If you need it, that'll help you get out of recovery too. The rear bumper, I don't think is as important, but if you're using it to get your spare tire mounted on the back, I guess so. But as far as armor wise, I don't think the rear is that important.
Well, I'm going to feel like a hypocrite because two of my vehicles have steel bumpers, the FJ Cruiser and the 80 series, but I'm voting for overrated partly because they weigh a lot. Ironically, when I see a 80 series that's semi-stock, I miss the look.
Yeah.
I appreciate how these vehicles look stock with just a mild lift and good tires. And now that my vehicles have totally changed, I kind of miss the look. But yeah, they weigh a lot. Not everyone needs a winch. Not everyone will use a winch. So they probably don't need a bumper replacement. And nowadays, these newer steel bumpers, people are required to cut up their stock bumpers. There's no turning back unless you want to buy extra parts.
Okay, so let me bring this into the discussion. What do you think about trimming stock bumpers?
I think that's fine because they're pretty mild. Sometimes you don't even know something's trimmed. To the untrained eye, no one knows that they were trimmed. But when I see people try to fabricate little bars to go with the lip, I don't think they're gonna hold up the weight of anything. So that's all for show.
Yeah. I think a lot of the times is metal bumper guys, they try to build these bumpers with really tight lines. Mm-hmm. And the first time your front end flex, that thing hits your metal fenders, or like you said, your trim bumper. If the bottom bar is not the same as the body, it's going to flex and it's going to hit. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Just one little thing to add is just like, I'm all about function. To be a full disclosure, my vehicle has front and rear steel bumpers. And it's more protection. You get more recovery points and less drama when you get in contact with the obstacle. So yeah, I would say the more the merrier in this situation. But again, from an overlander's perspective, I think they're overrated. From an off-roader's perspective, I think they're justified, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Off-road is necessary. Overland is an option.
So next on our list, we're almost at the very end. We have rock sliders. Chris?
Absolutely justified, whether you're an overlander or an off-roader. Generally, the inherent nature of sliders is to be bolted or welded to the vehicle's actual frame. Unibodies, such as the Forester and the RAV4 or Ridgeline and Passport, those are popular overlanding vehicles these days, where it's a little tricky because it's a unibody. So it's like, you can't really put all your weight on it, but the benefits of sliders, just greatly outweigh the cons. You get that protection from hitting, God forbid, your body on trails and stuff, because it's just one of those things where, you're trying to go over obstacles and you don't realize what you're subjecting your vehicle to. You're too busy just trying to go straight ahead safely without killing yourself. And then you realize, holy crap, I'm about to high center a rock or hit something. But thankfully, sliders are there just to bail you out in situations. Furthermore, they help you pivot around obstacles. Mm-hmm. So you have the kick out on the slider that helps you leverage all that weight to hook around it and in tight corners and stuff. So I'm all for it.
Cool. Sang?
Yeah. I can't be done with that for this because it's one of the first things you should get. I think with off-road trucks, the sliders and tires will get you 75% of the way, as well as a skid plate. But they're your side protection that you can get hit with, and especially a slider with a kick out, I've found is the most useful for me. That kick out saves you a lot of time. Lots of the times, especially with a rock hanging out or even like a tree or something like that. So just I feel like it's necessary armor that for anybody that's actually going to attempt to do any serious off-roading. Even with a unibody vehicle, I feel like that'll save the car more than taking it straight to the body. So especially when clearance is an issue.
Mm-hmm. So we clearly all agree that it's justified. I don't really have anything negative to say about it. Aside from the weight, they work as a step. So they're a practical mod. They could be used every day by people that need to step into their lifted vehicles.
That's how you sell to your wife.
Exactly, right. And then they're great to be as a point where you can lift your vehicle to put your high lift jack.
Recovery point. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're a great recovery point. You could pull your vehicle from that point if necessary. And they're inexpensive and they're a great DIY project to install. So there's nothing really bad you can say about rock sliders. Here we go. The next item on the list are our rooftop tents. Chris.
No, I'm good. Overrated. I'm really big on having nothing other than my roof over my head for my setup, because I just don't like being top heavy. Being top heavy in an off-road vehicle just invites more opportunities to get into hazardous situations where, if you have to do emergency maneuvers and stuff, your truck may not handle the way you want it to be. And, it increases rollover risk. That's just me. But, if you drive normal, if you chill out and stuff, stay in the right lane all the time, go for it. Rooftop tents are certainly a luxury, especially in inclement weather, adverse conditions and stuff. And if you don't like critters or bugs, so you stay elevated, so on and so forth. But for me, I'm pretty minimal. I have a flat platform in my GX in which I just put a X-Ped, double side mat that just takes up the whole area. So it's I just sleep inside the GX, which is great. When you sleep inside your vehicle, you get all the insulation and a lot of stuff. So it really helps out on cold nights and stuff. I'm okay without it. I think it's overrated.
Sang.
Now, it's pretty obvious, but I'm going to think they're overrated as well. I come from the era that, rooftop tents didn't exist. So we ground camped it, or if I'm by myself, like Chris said, you sleep in the truck. And now you have these nice goose gear platforms and stuff like that that's already set up for a bed, and you still have your storage and whatnot. Now, I understand that rooftop tent technology has gotten a lot better where they're not as bulky, they're stronger, they're more resilient. But it always scares me to see a rooftop tent opened when it's a very windy trip. If you're in even that Mojave trip that we did in the canyon is those high winds. If you're not protected by any trees, that's swaying your whole truck. So that kind of scares me, to be honest. I've always had big dogs, so I can't really sleep up there with them. So I've never had a rooftop tent.
I would like to have in a hypothetical situation, if I had a dedicated overland vehicle, it probably would have a rooftop tent on there, because it's certainly just luxurious and stuff like that. It's convenient. All you have to do is just pop the thing up. For me, the con for me of sleeping inside my truck is you have to throw all your crap out, and then you set everything up. So, I get the luxury about it. I see the convenience, but I'm okay without it.
That's exactly why I bought it. I was on a trip once and I chose to sleep in the vehicle. I left everything outside and I realized I had like $5,000 worth of photography gear out there. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? So I do have a rooftop tent on something that's considered a dedicated vehicle and almost dedicated for solo trips. But I still believe it's somewhat overrated because first of all, they're very expensive. And then you have to still figure out how to mount it to your vehicle. So people end up buying roof racks for the rooftop tent. And it'll take up all the real estate up there. They are top heavy, although some have become very lightweight. Like the one I bought is like 110 pounds, which is their average is almost 170.
Wow.
So yeah, that is a key word. It is a luxury. I don't think it's a necessity. Even I have a ground tent that deploys just as fast and I could put it away just as fast. So unfortunately, I have to say it's overrated. We all have reasons for it. And I think just since I have a dedicated vehicle for it, I decided to put it up there. But I would never use it if I went out with my family members, because we're going to be ending using a ground tent anyway.
I see. Yeah. It's not enough room, right? It's not.
Yeah, definitely not enough room. We actually took that vehicle to camping in Santa Barbara, and I brought a ground tent because I didn't want to be crammed in there with my son. So I ended up bringing 2 tents. So
yeah.
What the hell was that about? I want to thank you both for joining me on this episode. Chris, thanks again. And thank you, Sang. You did great on this first podcast. We literally have decades of experience on this video. So I really appreciate your insight on all these topics.
Yeah, feel free to invite us back anytime. I had a lot of fun.
That's great.
It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Cool. And thank you and stay safe out there.